everyone, we are here with Drew Walkup, director Drew Walkup, Adam Armstrong, and Marcus Devivo, co-writers of a new film called Endangered, and that comes out Tuesday, July 26th on VOD and on demand. Gentlemen, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
I'm good. I'm good. I was really excited to talk to you about this project, and I wanted to ask you, how can you just give us the pitch about what Endangered is, what the movie's about?
Sure. I'll take this one. So Endangered is about Allison. She is a up-and-coming architect who's currently not working in her profession, and she's driving for a rideshare service backseat to make ends meet. And one night she ends up coming across this passenger who's not so doesn't have quite the right look to him, and she decides shady dude, and she decides to take the fare against her better judgment, and through a twisted turn of events ends up having to turn to him for his help to escape the police, get out of drug busts, and eventually find out who this guy really is.
Okay. And how did the project all come about?
That's a great question. So I was running a company called Rebel HQ based out of Orlando, Florida, and we were looking for really strong projects. And I approached Adam and Marcus to see if they had any feature film scripts that would fit the budget range that we were looking at. And they well, I'll let Marcus and Adam answer the rest of that story.
We do not. We have been co-writers for several years, and we've worked on projects, for Drew. But everything we had was a feature script that was, had big armored car heists or big set pieces that were way out of our budget range for this micro budget feature. So Drew is like, well, if you don't have anything, can you come up with something? And we're like, sure. So we hashed out 2 or 3 concepts. 2 of them were terrible in hindsight, and I think we came up with this idea of, there hadn't been anything in the rideshare space yet, other than Collateral, which is kind of a whole different beast. And we thought, okay, well, we've got a car, we get some interesting characters. For this budget level, we can really make that cook. And then I think Marcus really took it to another level from there.
Yeah, I mean, the initial concept was Adam's idea to do a thriller or horror type movie in the with rideshare as the theme, which we hadn't really seen before, and I think he also rightly reasoned that would be pretty cheap because it's mostly in a car, and that was our budget. But we didn't have a story or anything, so I came up with a couple ideas of how that could go. Basically, what's dangerous about that situation? Maybe someone gets into the car, you don't know who they are. You also don't know who your driver is. That's weird. You don't necessarily know where you're going to end up. What's going to happen along the way. There's all these different ideas of bizarre things that could happen. And what I ended up doing was just sort of combining them all into something that was, I think, actually pretty original.
Yeah, you guys mentioned Collateral, and that was actually the first thing that came to mind. But that wasn't so much a rideshare thing as a taxi thing.
No, they didn't have it back then.
Yeah. So, were there other projects that inspired this? Were there other film greats you were trying to?
Emulate? What actually I was thinking about a lot when we were writing the script was Hitchcock, because we were writing a very a sort of personal level thriller about these 2 characters. It's really about the driver and the passenger for most of the movie, and I felt like Hitchcock was the right vibe for this movie. And we were talking about strangers on a train and things like that. where sort of these strangers meet and get into sort of a dangerous situation, and ending up having to sort of either rely on each other or sort of be contested between the two to get out of this thriller that they find themselves in.
Yeah, I would second that. And there's also a tradition of Hitchcock movies where you have a character, and for 2/3 of the movie, the question is he or isn't he a murderer? That's a popular theme. And really, I think to go to the Hitchcock thing, I think the three of us, Marcus, Drew, and myself, our tastes kind of range. Like I'm more of like a independent film and classic film. Marcus maybe more into science fiction. Drew's more of a populist. But I think where we all meet is Hitchcock. That's kind of our love language between the three of us.
Sure, yeah, definitely.
That's where the Venn diagram
Yes.
overlaps. And so what I find interesting about indie film, and in particular approaching an indie project, is how you construct it. And this one, I was reading the director's statement and from Drew, and you mentioned that you wanted to do an indie film that was commercial. So how do you construct a commercial indie film that's not going to cost a fortune?
With a lot of difficulty. I think the first thing was, and I think in this situation, really positive thing was that Adam and Marcus and I are longtime collaborators, and so there is a language that we speak, a shorthand, right, that we have, and that enabled us really to work on the script collaboratively, and really craft it into exactly what we wanted, what we all envisioned it to be. And then I think from there it was really taking what Adam and Marcus wrote in this like really wonderfully crafted noir, and then adding a little spin here and there, like through the casting. There's some good stories about how I was sharing some of the auditions with the guys, and for some of the roles they had one opinion, I had a different opinion, and we ended up going with mine because I was directing it. But I think at the end of the day, we all recognize that the decisions that were made do fit within the vision of the film as it was produced, versus what some of the other decisions that could have been made. It would have been a very different project. So I think that really, trying to do something that is, a low budget film, but also has a very, as Adam mentioned, populist or commercial vibe, it's not always easy. But I think that the team that we put together really made this what it is. And, I have to give kudos to our DP, Anthony Kuntz, as well, because he brought so much to the table and really, I think, visually made this film as commercial as it could be.
Yeah, there's definitely a polished look to it. But Adam, Marcus, the same question for you. When you're how does budget influence the things you choose to bring into the story?
Well, it was definitely a consideration for the first time, mostly when we worked on smaller projects that had obvious limitations, but we never done anything this long form that had this kind of limitation. So, we just chose, the format, the plot, it just kept it, in the car as much as we possibly could. And I think that's maybe, a third of the story, half of the story. And then we're like, okay, we have to get out of the car now. And for the most part, I think we came up with a couple of things that were maybe like, okay, we had to throw those out. But for the most part, we stuck pretty close to, we were able to pull from, stay in the zone.
Yeah, well, if anything, I feel like it was the other way around, because because we were trying to be pretty conservative when we were writing it, and we would sometimes run ideas by Drew and be like, here's what we would do, but we're gonna try and do something else because we know you guys can't handle that. We don't have the budget or whatever. And Drew would actually say to us, guys, just write it write the movie you want to see, and we'll figure it out. And there's some scene in particular that I figured like, oh, there's no way we're gonna get away with this. This scene will never work. We don't have the budget for this. But it was actually a scene that was Adam's idea. He wanted to put an alligator in the movie. And I said, well, that's not going to work. What are you thinking? There's no way we could do that. But Drew was like, guys, just write it. Just send us the script. We'll figure it out. If it's, he would say, if we need to cut it down, we'll tell you. But don't write it that way. Don't write it low budget. Write the movie you want. And I'll tell you what the budget is. I'll tell you what we can do. So we gave him the alligator scene.
Yeah.
And he was like, you know what, guys? No problem. This is Florida. What are you talking about? I've got an alligator guy. Half the crew knows an alligator guy. This isn't a problem.
Walk around the neighborhood and shoot an alligator.
Yeah. So really, I think that was a good lesson, honestly, is don't let it limit your creativity. Don't hold yourself back. That's the production's problem. You're the writer. You got to get those good ideas in there. That's the important thing.
And this is again for everyone. Why was it important to have a strong female protagonist?
I think when we even when we first started writing the project, that was one of the prompts that I gave Adam and Marcus was, can we set this up so that we have a leading lady in this role? And there's a multitude of reasons for it, but I think primarily, to me, I wasn't thinking about checking a box or trying to do a diversity play or anything like that. It really felt to me like it would be something that I wanted to do. It'd be something like I wanted to work with a woman in that leading role. It was also something where I wanted to tell a story that I hadn't told before, and challenge myself in that way. And I knew that by I don't necessarily believe that we need to have white filmmakers telling white stories, black filmmakers telling black stories, female filmmakers telling female stories. I feel like all filmmakers have a story that they want to tell, and the people, whether they're different sexes or races or whatever, from different cultures, can all be a part of that story. And so I think that for me, when I jumped into this and I said, I really want to have a female protagonist, it was about figuring out how I work with someone that comes from a completely different background that I would just have absolutely no idea how to do specific aspects, how to work with her on specific aspects of the role. Like, as a man, I've never felt danger getting into a car with another person, right? And so to me, it was a really exciting opportunity to be able to collaborate with Lizzie in a way where she was bringing a lot of the time more to the project than I was able to give back to her. And I think that in and of itself was a really unique experience. And I was really privileged to have Lizzie be that partner with me throughout this process. I really can't imagine anyone else being in that role. And I would love to do it again. I'd love to have another film with a lead female protagonist. I'd love to have another film with other diverse roles in these leading roles. I think that it is really what is one of the most exciting things about this next phase of the industry and this next phase of cinema is getting these people that we haven't been accustomed to on camera and really starting to tell stories that are meaningful to a much larger audience.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And you touched on the fact that Adam and Marcus were both involved in the casting and kind of going over that as well. But what were you looking for in casting your two leads?
Yeah, so we, there's, especially when you're looking at independent films and trying to think about marketing and distribution, all of the things that like I can't not think about as I walk into a production. Typically you're looking at how can we, who's got a name, who's got cachet, like how can we, set this film up for the largest audience possible seeing it. And in our case, we explored that a bit, and we did have some interest from talent that would have maybe propelled the film in a different way. But at the end of the day, when I looked at the options that we had on our plate, and I looked at the budget and the timeline, and I looked at the fact that we were not going to have the opportunity for any sort of reshoots or anything like that, I knew that the cast that I wanted to have were people who were just as passionate or more passionate about this project than I was. And so I think that, it was really about, it became for me a very clear a list of things that I had to check off, which was like started with, chops, acting talent first. Like, these people are saying a ton of lines. They're sitting in a car together. You have to be sold into who these people are. And then after that, it was really about the passion for the script, understanding the characters. And thankfully, Michael was actually going to be playing the low boy character. And I called him 2 weeks beforehand when we had some cast shifts happen, and I said, hey, would you be able to play the passenger? And he of course obliged, and did an incredible job with the role. And so it was that's kind of like in summary how that process went.
Excellent.
Yeah, Michael's a real pro, and we've known him for a long time, and I knew he'd be great. And I was really rooting for him to be in the movie. At one point early on, we were considering casting. It is low budget. We wanted to get some at least some name recognition in there. We're thinking of casting maybe, how about a YouTube celebrity or something like that, and someone who can put a little publicity on the movie. But I said, well, how about we cast like someone who's a good actor instead? Because these guys can't stop. So I'm honestly glad they didn't pan out, because we ended up with a really great cast. That's one thing I was really impressed by.
That's awesome. So basically, when somebody watches this movie, what's the feeling you want them to have, the takeaway? What were you trying to get across to the audience? Any of you?
Well,
what do you think, Adam?
That's a good question.
Anxiety.
What's that?
Anxiety.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, every scene we wrote, that's how we would approach it. We'd approach it thematically, and we knew it was a movie about suspense. For me, that was the key word. And so every scene we wrote, we said, what's the suspense angle here? How do we turn up the tension? How do we put anxiety into people, like Adam said? And as a writer, for me, that's the way you approach it, is you think about what's the central theme of your movie: suspense, anxiety. And if a scene doesn't fulfill that, if a scene doesn't fit into that theme, you don't need that scene in the movie. That's what should guide you as a writer, I think.
As we were writing it, every 5 pages or so, we'd go, all right, what's the worst thing that could happen now?
Yeah, exactly. And we were honestly, we had the script, we had the plot all figured out, and about 2/3 of the way through the movie, through the story, Adam says, we need one more terrible thing to happen. There isn't enough. The movie was jam-packed with terrible stuff happening, but I was like, no, we need one more. We need one more bad thing to happen to these characters. And literally, he was like, "What's at this point in the movie? What's the worst thing that could happen?" And we, not to give anything away, but at a certain point, you don't want to be pulled over by the cops when you're in a dicey situation in the car. So we added the cop character late in the writing.
Mhm.
We added a scene where they get pulled over because we knew that was going to bring up the tension, and we liked that scene so much that we ended up going back and establishing the cop character earlier in the movie. So now he's like one of the main characters in the story.
That's cool.
Even though we just threw him in at the end just as like one more little twist of the screw there.
Excellent. Well, you guys have done an amazing job, and I'm very happy to be interviewing you guys here. And do you have anything else coming up or after this?
Oh
one?
yeah.
We're working
Oh
on
yeah.
stuff.
We have a script actually out in market right now, which is actually based on another app. Go figure.
Right.
It's a film called Push to Kill, and it tells the story about what if an app was created that enabled anyone to become a murderer, or enabled you, anyone, to put out a contract on someone that you didn't like, or maybe someone who is going to usurp you in your corporate job, or anything like
exactly.
that. So it's an anthology film that both Adam and Marcus wrote, and it's something that we're really excited to dig into, because it really, the handoff between Endangered and Push to Kill, there's a lot of shared DNA in it, and not just from the hook of the app, but just from like a social commentary standpoint, and really trying to explore how these different people and different from different socioeconomic backgrounds and different cultural backgrounds would interact with something like this if it was actually real. So it's a very exciting project, and we've been getting some really interesting feedback on it. So we're crossing our fingers that we're going to end up setting the project up very soon.
Well, I hope to see you guys again and be able to talk to you about that project when it gets green.
That would be wonderful.
Sure.
Gentlemen, Drew, Adam, Marcus, it was a pleasure talking to you. And everyone, watch Endangered on demand this coming Tuesday, July 26th. And thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Norman.
Well, thank you. It was a lot
All
of
right,
fun.
you guys, take care.